Nima, I know you've done a lot with authentication, so you're talking to a lot of enterprises in terms of improving the usability. What are you seeing in terms of some of the big risks with some of the new technologies that are coming to market based on AI and machine learning?
Nowadays we mostly talk about the models, the vulnerabilities that might happen from the models, but we also should look into another area of vulnerability, which is the data that we are using. As we go forward, AI becomes more mainstream. We are seeing that new verticals are popping up. One of the more recent ones that was very interesting to me, published a couple of years ago, was patch-based backdoor attacks on self-learning models. So these models are working on a lot of unlabeled data, huge data sets that most of the time they're unlabeled. So what the adversaries are doing, they're putting some small patches in the size of a few pixels on images. And once they do that, that would be a trigger point that could be used as a backdoor. As an example, they can train those patches to be recognized as, let's say, a Rottweiler, a dog. And then, let's say, a drone is flying over Russia and then sees those patches attached to, let's say, a tank, and then that thinks that it's a Rottweiler. So you can imagine that this amount of large data sets that are used for training these models, there might be a lot of data that is not clean enough. So you have to be very cautious about the data that you're using for training your models, because otherwise that can create backdoors that hasn't been anticipated.
We definitely see a lack of trust with some of the data some of the information that comes back from our testing, the hallucinations that you spoke of, and so there needs to be a human layer of oversight to be able to filter that through. We're not anytime soon going to be releasing just AI generated straight to our customers, because I think that's irresponsible and it's not quite there yet. The other question is what you referred to as that sort of explainability, and particularly we work with a lot of highly regulated companies that get audited, and it's not acceptable to just say, the AI black box told us to do this, and so that's why we did it. If you don't have the ability to actually trace it back and understand where that data came from to make that decision, somebody needs to be accountable for that decision, somebody had to have some level of human oversight. I think that's key. The other one that we've looked at, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts, is the notion of copyright. It's in a bit of a state of flux in this state, and so you're generating code from some of these codexes, you're generating content in terms of like whether it's marketing or otherwise, and that's being pulled from sort of a corpus of data that was either open on the internet, and it's hard to tell sort of where that copyright sort of lies. And so one of the concerns we have, and we've heard from others, is like, how do you treat it now, knowing that potentially in a year, 2 years, 3 years, there will be some regulation that comes in and throws all that away? Either you have to make your source open source, or there's some implication that's unknown at this point. Is this something that you guys have come across so far or seen concerns about?
So anyway, if the code is generated through AI, as you mentioned, it's not reliable now to have like 100% reliance on it. So the human in the loop element that comes to that probably covers you, to my understanding. You would do some changes to that code, and to my understanding, that would be your intellectual property, because you are the last person that doing your intellect or adding your intellect to that code. So that's my personal opinion.
In some regards, it's very much like when you do a search and you come upon Stack Overflow code samples and you copy and paste those. But as you said, there's still a human in the loop that's actually going to be accountable for placing that into a production system. So I think I'm going to go to the next question. So there's been a lot of doomsday comments linking AGI or artificial general intelligence to the events of like the Matrix or Terminator, where the destruction of humanity. We've also talked about a bunch of concerns around the bias in models, enforcing accountability, how foreign actors are using this to attack systems and deepfakes that might influence elections. Different countries are at different stages of this. I know the NIST RMF has produced. We've got very little documentation, and people are talking about regulation, but I'd love to get your thoughts, and maybe Pamela, we'll start with you because you're heavy into this. Do you think we should regulate the use of AI? I think I know the answer, but maybe if so, and what would that look like? Where would you focus your efforts? Where do you think the governments are going to go, and where do you think they should be going in terms of regulation on this topic?
So to me, it's a little bit more complex, because if we do heavy regulation, as Pamela mentioned, it's going to be counterproductive for the businesses. But let me share my story. So 20 years ago, when we introduced emotions-based AI and we open sourced it, it was for the best of the humanity. So algorithms that can be used for a variety of use cases, from washing machines, control engineering, even in the finance for predicting stock prices. But a couple of days ago, I read a paper that they were using it for missile guidance systems. This is something that I never anticipated like 20 years ago that would have been used for these purposes. But then if, let's say, the US put regulations or the West put regulations for that, these technologies anyway would be used in some other countries, which would be kind of like putting us in lower hands comparing to those countries. So if, let's say, we do heavy regulations in the US and in the West, how can we be assured that that wouldn't happen in the rest of the world? Then, to me, the businesses should themselves be accountable for that. So they should think about the consequences of what they're doing. But many of the things that would happen in future would be unpredictable. We don't have a good understanding that 20 years from now, what would happen with the AIs that we are developing right now.
Do you trust the governments, in their ability to do this? And I think, they're not technical experts. This is new to us, and it's wildly new to them. And then another sort of related question that was more, do you trust the technology companies? So you're sort of, you've got people at OpenAI sort of pushing for more self-regulations or even licensing, which seems like it might be a barrier, but you're almost caught between like a government, but they may not know what to do or how to approach it, between tech companies who seem like they're fairly self-serving and they've already proven in a number of areas that they don't have our trust in terms of privacy and security. So how do you guys sort of vision that?
One thing, I mean, answering that question, trusting government, personally, no. Trusting big tech, no. But I think too, ChatGPT and OpenAI is a little bit, as you mentioned, too immature to be used in the enterprise applications. And one of the problems, especially, is that many people, many employees are forgetting that how much they have to intervene in order to get understanding of the answers that they're receiving from ChatGPT. And also, at the same time, ChatGPT is a little bit too much confident in the responses that it generates. So many times it gives probably not the right answer, and it also emphasizes that this is the right answer, even though you are giving the human feedback to it. So we have seen cases that just last week popped up in a court, that a lawyer was relying too much on the answers that it received from ChatGPT, and even the references that was mentioned by ChatGPT was not valid. So if that comes to the enterprise level or the legal world, that's a little bit dangerous. And the liabilities that come later on with that, as some fake news generator or fake science generator, can be also outstanding. And that's one of the reasons that I think that you are seeing, like, Sam Altman is distancing himself from the monetary and business side of OpenAI because of the liabilities that might come after that.
Yeah. Privacy lives on de-identifying data strongly. That you want to be able to, people should be able to use data as long as there's no personal identifiers attached to the data. Then you can have the win-win. You've got the data, but there's no risk to privacy. In terms of AI, how is AI, and I ask this genuinely, I don't know, can they go and scour, and if it's not de-identified data, not collect the data? I'm guessing absolutely not. But I don't know. How would you go about saying, AI, ChatGPT, you should only access de-identified data? Thank you.
Generative AI, another area that you mentioned is facial recognition. So in that case, that would be maybe a better example. So if you have like privacy by design in training your models, and then later on in implementing those models, it's absolutely possible. Like the model that, for example, you use in your Face ID for facial matching. So in that case, all the PIIs are removed. The data that you are using are completely de-identified. And then there is some other companies that got into trouble. I don't want to name them, but they used they didn't remove the PIIs from them, and then now you are seeing they're getting lawsuits in all sorts of countries. So your approach in designing the algorithm can be both way, and of course, privacy is the future, so highly recommended to remove the PIIs from data in training before that.
I love talking about this stuff. Sounds like there's lots of great opportunities, but also lots of threats that we need to be aware of. And we're certainly leading the charge here and hope to start sharing some of this information and the insights that we're learning. But there's a bright future when it comes to some of this stuff. And thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights. You guys are some of the leading experts in this field, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.